Hello everyone, this is Tetrafolium, and I'm here today to talk about Snorlax. It's been a little while actually since I've recorded a video like this. My schedule's been really weird the last few weeks, and it's probably going to be weird for a long time. But um, I'm going to squeeze these videos in when I can, and because, I just like making them, and I think it's been good for me and my development, both as a speaker and as a player in this format. So, um, the music here is as very brief as it is from Pokepark, the first one, Pikachu's Adventure. I think that game was really fun, and I remember making one of my friends play it at my house, like completely overnight. I think we did it like one 8-hour session. Um, so I don't know how he feels about that, but that's the only other person I know who's played it. So let me know in the comments if you're down with Pokepark, or if you've played it before and if you liked it. This is Cavern Zone, of course, but I'll probably switch it to something that's a little bit more substantial as we get further into this video. So the viability rankings for Snorlax has him ranked number 15. That's kind of interesting. There are a lot of people who have some key problems with Snorlax, even to the degree that they wouldn't even rank Snorlax on their viability ranking, which is kind of crazy to me. But I understand some of those issues, and that's part of what we're going to talk about today. Um, but there you go. Snorlax is got about the same respect as Dugtrio, Aerodactyl, Starmie from the community at large. And those are three Pokemon that I really respect and I think are great. So Snorlax, we'll see if I come down on this number 15 in this same tier as all of these other great Pokemon. But little comment question here. I think I might be doing this for the future. See how it goes. Is Snorlax the best Curse Sweeper in the format? I know that some other Pokemon, even some Pokemon who are higher ranked, like Skarmory, get Curse, I believe. I know it got Curse in Gen 2. Um, you don't see Skarmory using Curse in Gen 3, though, because, I mean, obviously, it wants to fit so many other great utility moves. But, yeah, it still does get Curse, so I don't know. I tend to think that maybe the answer is yes, but we'll see if you can come up with a different Curse user that you think is better than Lax. And part of the reason why I made this video is because I was looking through some of the YouTube creator features, and sometimes it gives some insane, uh, what should I call this even? Like a suggestion for a video. Um, they use like this AI stuff to get the uh, thumbnails. I mean, this thumbnail doesn't look like too terribly bad, but like the palm of Snorlax's hand is discolored. It's got like a seam going down its belly. Like I don't know what that is. And then like we're talking about its massive size and sleep-inducing nature. What does that mean? What do you mean by sleep-inducing nature? Like, um, this just goes to show AI is just like trying to guess the next word in a sequence more than like generating any sort of information. So um, thank you, YouTube AI, for being so weird and giving me something to talk about, I guess. All right, we will move on to uh, some new music here. There you go, Pokemon Square from Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. You know, this is like, I don't know if this is the first time that Munchlax showed up in a video game. It might have been, in fact, from Pokemon XD. No, actually, did Mystery Dungeon come out before XD? I'm not sure, but it was really interesting that these side games kind of backdoored some introductions for some Pokemon, like Bonsly, for example. you can find in both the Coliseum and Mystery Dungeon games before its respective generation where it came out. That's kind of interesting. We're going to talk about some Sand Week and Spike Week Pokemon. So first, Sand and Spikes are integral parts of this metagame. I mean, if you've been watching my videos, you probably know this by now, but Sandstorm, Permanent, Spikes, like just damage on switch, you can't go wrong with that. It just, your opponent is getting punished for playing the game when you put these up. So that's exactly what you need on a lot of teams. But there are some OU ranked Pokemon that will take damage from both. And I've got all of the ones that happen to fall into this category here. So there's some pretty nice Pokemon like Blissey and Suicune and Starmie, like some of the higher tier Pokemon here. It's not a coincidence, I don't think, that some of these are lower ranked as far as the viabilities goes. Breloom, Cloyster, Jolteon, Medicham, I think even Milotic are all considered like C or D rank Pokemon. But yeah, there's some really nice ones here, but we're gonna cut this list down a little bit. So anything that has recovery, I'm giving a yellow X to. Yes, Medicham gets recover, which is kind of insane. I don't know if I would ever use it. It's really hard to fit onto a Medicham set, but could be an interesting idea. And then your glass cannons. These are the Pokemon who are so frail that they're probably going to die in one hit, or they're just gonna like explode in the case of Cloyster. I'm gonna knock those off too. So even if Medicham didn't have the move Recover, it would have been knocked off of this list simply for being a glass cannon. But that leaves us with 3 Pokemon to talk about here: Heracross, Snorlax, and Suicune. So these are sort of like these bulky Spikes Week and Sand Week Pokemon. You know, to greater or lesser extents. I know that Heracross isn't super duper bulky, but that's what we're about to show here. The defensive profile for these Pokemon. Yeah, Heracross is bringing up the rear on 2 out of the 3 categories here. But, I mean, 80 HP and 95 Spadef, while not nearly as good as Suicune and Snorlax. Suicune and Snorlax are like the gold standards of bulky offensive Pokemon. So, like, let's cut Heracross some slack. Ugh, that's a strange... I don't know why I flubbed that, but alright, whatever. But it does have a little bit more defense than Snorlax. Now, when you take into account how much higher Snorlax's HP is, Snorlax generally takes less percentage damage than Heracross would. But Heracross is still pretty nice at taking a hit or two and then dishing it back with a really, really strong Mega Horn. There's also Rock Slide, there's also Focus Punch, things like that. So, yeah. But Snorlax is definitely, of the 3 of these, the best for special defense. Yes, I know that Suicune has a slightly higher special defense, but again, with the HP difference, like, Snorlax is going to be taking less damage of its total pool overall. So, yeah, I think that a lot of times Snorlax gets compared to Blissey. I'm not sure if that's the most apt comparison. I think the 2 have some pretty key differences that we'll probably talk about in a few slides, but they're, I mean, the first among them, probably the biggest, is that Snorlax does not have a like consistent, reliable recovery move. It has to use Rest if it's gonna do that. So, but again, we'll talk about that later. Suicune is in a similar boat to Snorlax, but because it has a much higher defense stat, it actually becomes one of the best defensive or physically defensive Pokemon in the tier, which is kind of insane given how good it is as an offensive Pokemon as well. But I digress. The offensive stats. So I just chose to list the highest of the 2 attack stats. None of these Pokemon really do mixed attacking. Snorlax kind of can, which again we'll talk about a little later, but it's not super great at it. But Heracross definitely is the most immediately strong of the three. It also has access to Swords Dance, which is phenomenal for boosting the attack stat. Neither Snorlax nor Suicune get anything that give it a +2 boost like that. Snorlax gets Belly Drum, of course, which is like that's the best you can ever do. It literally gives you +12, which, well, you get capped at +6, but it will maximize your bulk, not just give you +6. You know what I'm saying? Did I say bulk? I meant buff. In any case, Snorlax is pretty close behind, actually. 110 is not terrible, and definitely makes it harder hitting than you might think, given its defensive prowess. And then Suicune, yeah, it's the lowest of these, but because it has the most consistent setup move in Calm Mind, then it's kind of just like blowing everybody out of the water here. And for speed, both Heracross and Suicune are sitting at a cool 85, which are both pretty good. They're not super duper fast, but they're fast enough to warrant consideration from the fast Pokemon. A lot of the base 100s want to run less speed and instead opt to get some more defensive value. But these two Pokemon right here, Heracross and Suicune, present problems for base 100s that want to go too slow. So yeah, I mean, it's a very important speed tier to know. Snorlax, on the other hand, is one of the slowest Pokemon in the format. I think there are a handful of Pokemon that might be slower technically, but functionally Snorlax is going to be the slowest thing on the field most of the time that it enters. But just for the sake of it, because I don't have a slide showing all the slowest Pokemon here. Technically, I'm going to skip over LCs that you would never see, really. I mean, Trapinch, I guess you might see that. But Torkoal's got 20 base speed. Dusclops has 25. Slowbro, Slowking, Steelix all have 30. And there are a handful of other fully evolved Pokemon that have 30. Parasect, Sunflora, Magcargo, Lickitung. I mean, but most of those Pokemon you're not going to see, so who cares? Yeah, so that's probably going to do it for this slide. I want to note about Heracross is that sometimes people view Heracross more as a glass cannon, and that is totally fair because a lot of times Heracross will just do max attack, max speed, does not really care about what it gets hit by, it just wants to hit a Mega Horn or two, and then it can definitely like fall into that. But I do think that the higher HP investment Heracross sets are a little underrated. If you've seen my Heracross video, you probably know that I kind of like the idea of rest plus sleep talk on Heracross, and that necessitates having a little bit of HP investment so that you don't just die to 2 hits all the time. But you don't necessarily have to go that route. So, I mean, you could argue that Heracross doesn't even really fit into this discussion, but I argue that it does because I think that its special defense stat is worth talking about. So, let's move on, though. I've already made a Heracross video. I'm so greedy about getting more information on these Pokemon. In any case, Snorlax and Suicune are really, really powerful win conditions. And these are the two sets that they commonly use to be the win condition. It's not the only way that they can get there, but it's the most common way, of course. CurseLax is going to leverage Snorlax's really good defensive stats in order to allow it to use a bunch of Curse. Curse, of course, if you're not a Ghost type, will give you +1 attack, +1 defense, -1 speed. Snorlax doesn't really care about losing its speed. There are like a rare handful of things that it can outspeed anyway, and most of those things have to be paralyzed. So, yeah, who cares? But you do have a really solid stab return. You could similarly use Frustration. They're essentially the same move, but I mean, Frustration causes you to have to edit more things in the team builder, so it saves you time to just click return. But I don't know if you like it for flavor. I know Zets has a team called Zets' Frustration, which uses a Frustration Snorlax. But yeah, essentially they're the same move. Now, when you get into later generations, when Ditto has the ability Imposter, there is some argument about Frustration being better than Return, because Ditto, if it transforms into your Pokemon, it has whichever move you have, so Return or Frustration. And if the Ditto has max Friendship, then Frustration is going to do 0 damage, basically, and vice versa. But I think that's kind of it's hard to say that Frustration is better, because if the Ditto user knows that, they would minimize their Friendship so that Frustration would be the stronger of the two. In which case, you kind of have to do like just a coin flip to decide whether you're going to be Return or Frustration if you really, really care about that sort of thing. But it hardly ever comes up. Transform, and especially in this generation, Transform is extremely rare. Ditto is terrible, Mew is banned, and Smeargle technically can transform, but it has really, really bad defensive stats. It's hard to get the transform off in a lot of cases. You would have to Spore, and then you're going to use your free turn to transform, which is, I mean, it can help you in some situations, but I digress. It's not, so yeah, Return is, don't overthink it. Return, Body Slam. I guess we could also mention Double Edge as a move here. It's not super duper common on CurseLax because you don't like taking the recoil and like weakening your own win condition, but Double Edge does a lot of damage, especially when you boost. So it can help you get to certain KO thresholds, like at +1, +2, that you otherwise would not be able to get to, which is important to note. And as you're playing around with your Snorlax EVs, I think you should give Double Edge some consideration. And against Pokemon that don't take too much damage from Double Edge, then Snorlax is not going to do that much recoil to itself, in a sense. And because Snorlax is a really high HP stat, and most Pokemon that it hits have low HP stats, you actually don't really take that much recoil damage. Say, like, if you're taking, what is it, a third, and you kill a Pokemon that has 300 HP, you'll take 100 damage, but if Snorlax has about 500 HP, that's only a fifth of your health, so that's not that bad. In any case, but we're not here to talk about math too much. Suicune, of course, I mean, you guys know this set. Calm Mind, Surf, Rest, and then last move can really be a wide variety of things, but Roar, Ice Beam, and Sleep Talk have the most utility. You'll actually see these two paired together on a lot of teams because Snorlax is really good at beating down teams that have weak physical resists and or have had their physical walls removed, and Suicune is the opposite. It's better against teams that don't have good special switch-ins, although Suicune is arguably just good in general. Oh, that's weird how that skipped there, but we're going to ignore it. CurseLax has some issues, though, as a sweeper, even more pronounced than maybe Suicune's. This is from the Smogon write-up, and I'm going to read through some of it here. Above all, Magneton is almost always paired with CurseLax for its ability to take out Skarmory. It also helps against Magneton and Choice Locked Metagross, who are two Pokemon that Snorlax kind of have some trouble with. So as we read through this, I'm gonna show off some of the Pokemon that we're talking about presenting problems for CurseLax. Magneton can also run runny days, Rain Dance or Sunny Day, thus letting Snorlax avoid being buffeted by Sandstorm. Okay, so there's Tyranitar there. A pursuit, I can't read, man. A pursuit user such as Tyranitar traps Gengar, thus creating a juncture for Snorlax without Shadow Ball to sweep late game. Dugtrio matches well with this set, being able to trap Celebi and Heracross, as well as steel types such as Metagross, Jirachi, and Magneton. I know that we talked about Magneton as being a counter to Magneton and Metagross earlier, but I feel like it's like only like specific cases where Magneton beats other Magneton and Metagross, so it's I kind of felt more like Dugtrio is the answer here. So if you're asking why did I not bring them up sooner, that's why. Psychic types such as Celebi and Claydol are common teammates. The former's Baton Pass can let trappers, namely Magneton and Dugtrio, work more easily, while the latter cannot only remove the spikes with its Rapid Spin, but can pivot into electric type attacks that would normally wear down Snorlax. Now, that being said, Snorlax does have a really nice special defense, and it's just solid into a lot of the electric type attackers. But that is true that with Sandstorm up, it can get worn down, and that is like basically the really big issue with this CurseLax set, and why you commonly see it on weather clear type strategies. If you watch my Ludicolo video, you'll see CurseLax in action with the support of Ludicolo with Rain Dance. But yeah, that's a lot of Pokemon down here that Snorlax has trouble with. The question really is, do you have enough team slots to address all of these matchups? So let's see some Pokemon that are suggested and some Pokemon that maybe I would suggest for addressing some of these matchups. So the first one that we talked about was Magneton. And Magneton is really good into Skarmory and pretty good into the other steel types. So these green arrows are like really favorable matchup, and the yellow are it's good in certain situations, or like it can win with the right positioning. So I mean, granted, any Pokemon could win with the right positioning. Magneton could beat say like a paralyzed Gengar that has 50% health, but I mean, like most things can beat that, so I'm not gonna go too crazy with it. But yeah, Magneton is great at removing the Skarm, as many of us probably know at this point. It's almost guaranteed to kill with max special attack investment and a magnet, but not quite. And that can present some issues because a lot of teams will run Magneton and no spinner as a means of getting rid of Skarm, and if Skarm gets like 2 spikes up, then that can be really brutal for teams that have no answer for spikes being on the field. So keep that in mind. For Metagross, Jirachi, and Magneton, you're going to need to find the right position for them, for Magneton to come in. Say, for example, you trade something into Metagross for some damage, you get it below 50%. Then Magneton can come in and usually kill it with Thunderbolt. I think Thunderbolt is around, like it's between 50 and 60% that it'll deal to most Metagross sets. So that's good to know. If you have HP Fire, then you are most likely going to kill an opposing Magneton. But the sort of issue with that is if the opponent has the same Magneton set as you, then it's just a speed tie, and like you could lose your Magneton going for that. So keep that in mind. And then Jirachi, most of the time what I like to do with Magneton is try to get the Thunder Wave on Jirachi, because any sort of Calm Mind variant is just going to boost up and beat the crap out of Magneton. So if you can get a Thunder Wave off early on the Jirachi, then that's really good. But you have to be careful about substitute Jirachi, who will just block your Thunder Wave. So yeah, it can present some issues. I want to note as well that, especially if you have Magnet on Magneton, Thunderbolt does more damage to neutral targets than HP Fire does. So against Metagross and Jirachi, you should be using Thunderbolt if you have Magnet. Now, if you don't have Magnet, the rolls are about the same. So you still should use Thunderbolt because you have a para chance, whereas Hidden Power Fire has no secondary effect, and I think you would rather like get the para than not on these guys. So yeah, just click Thunderbolt into the Steel types. All right. The exception being if they are resisting Thunderbolt and not resisting HP Fire. So like, I don't know what Steelix I guess would be the example. Of course Thunderbolt does nothing to Steelix. So yeah. Then let's talk about Dugtrio. And Dugtrio beats a lot of guys, but it kind of depends, right? So I have green arrows for Heracross and Magneton. The reason being is that almost every Heracross and almost every Magneton are just going to get outsped in one shot. There are some situations where, say, Heracross is behind a substitute that Dugtrio is not going to consistently beat the Heracross. So keep that in mind. And then Magneton has some counterplay into Dugtrio. It can use Endure to live a hit, and then it can get a Salac boost, and then it can outspeed and kill back with HP Grass or HP Ice. But I don't think that that's too much of a concern, because you could simply switch, and if you have something that switches in well to Magneton, like takes its hits well, like a Blissey, for example, then the Magneton set doesn't really do that much. So, plus, if Dugtrio is running a funny set, like, say, Substitute, and you Substitute as they go for Endure, then Dugtrio has a guaranteed win on Magneton, unless you, like, choke like crazy. The rest of these Pokemon, I have these yellow arrows. That's because Dugtrio does outspeed and hit for super effective damage on all of them, but most of these Pokemon will run some bulk in order to live a Dugtrio hit, so you might need some chip to handle this. The easiest way to get chip would be to set up spikes, but as you'll see with Snorlax, because of like the team slots that it demands, it's kind of hard to fit a spiker in a lot of cases. So yeah, but no, Dugtrio is really good into like many of these matchups that are tough for Snorlax. Here's Tyranitar as the Pursuit Trapper for Gengar. It's really good at doing that. It doesn't always get it off, but it almost always leaves Gengar really low, or just straight up kills it. So yeah, but I have a little question mark here, because the issue with Snorlax, right, is that it doesn't like sand. So if you have a Tyranitar on your team, you're just giving yourself problems for your Snorlax. Now, that can be addressed in a certain number of ways that we will talk about later. So it's not like Tyranitar and Snorlax can't roll together, but if one of the things that you're trying to do is mitigate CurseLax's bad matchups, then I wouldn't necessarily recommend putting Tyranitar on your team, because that just exacerbates the sand issue. But Umbreon is one of the best Gengar counters in the format, thanks to its combination of Synchronize to punish Gengar for going for Will-O-Wisp, and it has a strong enough stab pursuit that it can 2-hit KO the Gengar, even if it's defensive. And with its really high HP and special defense stats, and even a pretty good defense stat, Gengar can't really duel against the Umbreon to get out of the situation. So, yeah, Umbreon's really good against Gengar. And there's some other ideas. There's Houndoom here, and I think about Houndoom as sort of like, well, with fire coverage, you're going to hit Skarmory, Celebi, Heracross, and the 3 steel types. With Will-O-Wisp, you can triple the Tyranitar, and then with Pursuit or Crunch, you can certainly destroy the Gengar. So, in theory, Houndoom would be really good with Snorlax, I think. Now, Houndoom's got some issues as well, like it's really tough into Dugtrio, as Dugtrio can just simply revenge kill it quite easily. And it's not always great into Blissey. It has some ideas to handle Blissey, namely beat up, but it's got some problems as well, and that's why you don't tend to see Houndoom that much. But you know what? Maybe I should have thought about Houndoom for this team. But the sort of thing here is that I'm saying, well, I guess to stop burying the lead so much, I think that CurseLax has some trouble, and I want to show off its other set more so. But we'll continue here. Triple Trap as a sort of team. So the idea behind a triple trap team, or a double trap team sometimes, is that you're going to have Dugtrio, sometimes Magneton, sometimes a Pursuit Trapper, sometimes all 3. The concept is that you'll have the Trapper remove the key element that you are struggling to deal with. So if you're up against, say, like a Skarmory team, you want Magneton to eliminate the Skarmory. If you're up against a team with like a defensive Jirachi that might stall out your Snorlax, then you want Dugtrio to try to eliminate that. You want Dugtrio to eliminate the Tyranitar. Tyranitar with Pursuit, you want to eliminate the Gengar. So the problem with this kind of team structure, like Tyranitar's Sand is pretty annoying for Suicune and Snorlax in the end game. So you're kind of incentivized to run Weather Clear on like your Dugtrio or your Magneton, which is fine. A lot of times they can give up a move slot for that. And on this particular team, like Dugtrio doesn't super duper need to trap the Blissey. So like you don't necessarily need to use beat up on it. Now granted, if you have a matchup where Snorlax is not good into anything other than Blissey, then like you would appreciate eliminating the Blissey for Suicune. But really the only Suicune, or the only Blissey set that Suicune would lose to is Calm Mind, because Suicune itself can just Calm Mind up to +6, and then if it ever gets a crit with Surf, it's over. So keep that in mind. But yeah, so you don't necessarily have to you don't necessarily need all of your move slots on all of your Pokemon, so you can afford to fit a Weather Clear in there, but Tyranitar's use will have to be limited to just KOing Gengar. You can't really use it to do much else, because like constantly switching the Tyranitar in is going to reset the Sandstorm, and like your goal is to not have the sand up. But that's kind of whatever. Now you could try to do something like run Houndoom here instead. I would not lead Houndoom probably, but Houndoom will not give you the same sand issue, but the issue with Houndoom, of course, is like, you know, it's got limited defensive utility, so it's not super duper easy to find an in for Houndoom. So yeah, we're gonna roll with what we've got here. There are Pokemon that really don't fear trapping from any of the 3 of these Pokemon, like Salamence and Flygon, that can give you some problems. Now, you can try to do some things like run Ice Beam on Tyranitar, which is, I think, not a bad idea for this kind of team structure. But, like, Salamence and Flygon, if they find Tyranitar at the right point of the game, are just going to kill it. So like that's kind of whatever. And then particularly if the Flygon has HP bug, then Celebi is in trouble against it. So like those are two Pokemon that match up well into like 3 or 4 of this entire team just by themselves, so that can be really tough. And then targets like Skarm, Fori, and opposing Tyranitar, if they play around the trap, then like your sort of goal with the team erodes. Like, say you have the Skarm reason, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go to Magneton, and then they switch to, say, like a Dugtrio, predicting your Magneton, then like you're really screwed. And even if they don't switch to like exactly Dugtrio, they could switch to something like, say, Flygon, and now you have to take an Earthquake on something because, like, yeah, your Magneton is not going to be helpful there. And yeah, that's some of the issues here. We also don't have a spinner, so if Skarmory or Fortress or something manages to get 1 or 2 or God forbid 3 layers, then we're in trouble. So the conclusion that I have for a team like this is that you have to get a lot of key plays right, and like it's not always easy to get the play right, because while yes, there are some smart plays that cover a lot of options, even what is considered the best play in most scenarios can get countered, because Pokemon is a really dynamic and interesting game. If it didn't work like that, then basically we'd be playing chess, and you know, chess is cool, but it's not always the most engaging game, I'll say. Not to shit on chess for all the chess fans in the audience, but so there are some other ways you can manage CurseLax matchups. This is a lot of text here, so just bear with me. With the right coverage, CurseLax can kind of trade into its own counters. So for example, if you have Brick Break, that is a really consistent option that beats Tyranitar. So that's, you don't necessarily have to worry about trapping and removing the Tyranitar for the sake of CurseLax getting the sweep off. Now, you may have still run into some issues where you don't want the sand to be up, which is a wholly separate issue than beating Tyranitar, like the Pokemon itself. So keep that in mind. But fighting coverage is really nice because it helps you against Tyranitar. It also helps you with the steel types, particularly Skarmory. If you have a +1 Brick Break or like even a Focus Punch, you can outpace Skarm's Leftovers healing through its Protect. So yeah, you might give it enough turns to get a bunch of spikes up, but if you're in the mode where like you're, say, like your CurseLax, if it beats the Skarmory, it beats the team, then like this can be a tenuous situation for the Skarm user. One crit from Brick Break or Focus Punch could really blow the game open. And yeah, I mean, at the cost of 3 spikes, depending on the context of the game, this might be really in the Snorlax user's favor. With 176 EVs with a Adamant or just an attack boosting nature, +1 self-destruct will OHKO a standard Skarmory. That's really good to know. So like there are CurseLax sets that run Boom, specifically so that they can catch a Skarmory switching in, because Skarmory wants to roar the CurseLax out, because every other of CurseLax's moves, like even Focus Punch, is not going to one-shot the Skarm unless it has like ridiculously high boosts. So this is an option for you if you want to have the CurseLax be the Skarm removal. It's kind of interesting, but I think a lot of people catch on to it, so be careful about it. And then Skarmory oftentimes runs Protect, so you have to be also careful about when you go for the Boom, because if you go for a Boom on a Skarm's Protect, you probably just lose the game right there. Shadow Ball is going to be really good into Gengar, who's otherwise like difficult for Snorlax to handle, and then you can play around the Wisp by just using Rest and then Heal Bell / Aromatherapy later, or you could just forego the Rest and then Heal Bell or Aromatherapy later. Great if there's not a lot of spikes on the field, but if there are a lot of spikes on the field, then your options get a little limited. Gengar's Wisp, since it's only a 75% chance to hit, and if it misses, Snorlax is basically just going to one-shot Gengar with Shadow Ball. Like, it's not always that good a situation for Gengar to be in. So, that's something important to note. And then, if you have boosts like +2, like, it doesn't really matter if the Gengar Wisps you, you'll still kill it. So, that's good to know. I want to talk about some other ideas for how to beat Skarmory, because I think when you're new to this format, you kind of view Magneton as like, this is the only way to really effectively and consistently deal with Skarmory. And that's not entirely true. There are some other ways you can do it. For those of you who are like me and you don't want to use Magneton on your team because Magneton is like, I mean, other than removing Skarm, like it doesn't do a lot. I mean, okay, I've said that and I've gotten some pushback. It's like, oh, Magneton can do this, Magneton can do that. And it's like, yes, that's probably true, but like a lot of other Pokemon can do those things, and sometimes all of those things, and usually will do it better than Magneton. So, I guess if you need the roll compression of all of that utility, like Thunder Wave or setting a Reflect or something like that, plus like eliminating Skarm, then Magneton is pretty nice for that. So, I'm not saying that Magneton's a bad Pokemon, but it is limited, and I don't love to use it when I can opt to use something else, which is why you haven't seen a lot of Magneton on my teams, but I digress. Houdini Metagross, which is Choice Band Max Attack. I mean, Houdini is more a play than a set. Houdini uses Explosion, and Skarmory will die on the switch in. So, like similarly to what I said with +1 self-destruct to Oko Skarm with CurseLax, Houdini Metagross with just its Choice Band can immediately eliminate a Skarmory, and Skarmory oftentimes likes to switch into Metagross because it's one of the only things that can handle multiple Meteor Mashes. And then it's a way for Skarmory to get spikes, but if it gets boomed on, then you could just lose your entire Skarmory, which is good to know. You could have your own Skarmory with Thief or Taunt. I would not necessarily recommend running both, but that can disrupt opposing Skarm pretty well. If you take away Skarm's leftovers, then Skarm is eventually going to lose, even to the Snorlax who's doing like 15% or so per turn. That's great, because Skarm doesn't get any recovery in this generation. If it got Roost, might be ban-worthy. We had a little bit of a discussion about that in Zetz's Discord server, where I'm not going to get into it now, but thankfully we don't have to deal with Roost Skarm in this generation, so that could be a play there. Knockoff plus Rapid Spin support can be really, really good into Skarmory. So say you have Hariyama knock off the Skarmory, and then you switch to Fortress to just constantly spin the hazards away from the Skarm. Eventually Skarm's going to run out of spikes, and Fortress is going to have more Rapid Spins, so then Skarm can't get the spikes down anymore. Fortress can also try to play Beatdown with something like HP Fire, or it can set up its own spikes and just win the spike war that way. So you'll see that kind of option as well. I want to note here, some of you will probably talk about like, oh, I'll just run Charizard, I'll just run Zapdos, and those just kill Skarm. And yes, that's true. They are really, really good at beating Skarm in a one-on-one situation, but a lot of times the Skarmory is just going to switch, and Skarm Bliss is really, really key for a reason, and that's because Blissey is really good into all the things that hit Skarm for an Oko. So any of the strategies that or just looking to hit Scarm really hard with one Pokemon to remove it, like you're gonna need multiple team members to be involved to eliminate the Skarmory. Now, if you have Magneton, that is a little bit of an easier situation to eliminate the Skarmory, but I mean, Skarmory still has some ideas for counterplay around Magneton as well, like say Yellow Skarm, which I don't really love it as a set, but it does fit onto some teams. And if your only way to deal with Skarmory is switch to Magneton and Yellow Skarm surprises you, then, well, congratulations, you just lost the game. So, yeah. We'll move on here. Okay. The elephant in the room, or whatever Snorlax is. It's not an elephant, but it probably weighs about as much as one. Actually, that's probably not true. Elephants probably weigh a lot more than Snorlax. Snorlax is like, what, like half a ton, according to the Pokedex? Is it over 1,000 pounds? No, it's probably like 800 or something. I don't know. I remember like being really into looking at heights and weights of Pokemon in the Pokedex when I was a kid. So I have some like really weird knowledge about some of these things, like about how Charizard is like shorter than the average American woman, but I digress. The elephant in the room here is that some people, and by some people I mean BKC, are big haters on Snorlax in this generation, which, okay, I don't want to misrepresent BKC's idea. In both of these videos here, basically BKC's argument is that the teams that Snorlax are commonly featured on tend to have a lot of problems into the most dominant style in the format, which is TSS. That's because Snorlax provides you absolutely no tools to handle Sand or Skarmory, and yes, it has immunity as an ability to stop Toxic, but it also doesn't help you against Gengar, who is a very common threat on these TSS teams. Now, again, you have some options to deal with some of these things, like, you know, you could boom the Skarm, you could Shadow Ball, you could have a Lumberry to fish that on the Gengar, but by picking one of those tools, you constrain your ability to have the other tools that would help you in other matchups. Because, like, yes, Snorlax could have all the tools that it needs to be really good into the combination of Tyranitar, Skarmory, and Gengar, but in order to do that, it's probably going to be really bad into Pokemon like Metagross and Jirachi and all those other like threats of the metagame. So that means that you either need to decide that you're going to support it with all these other Pokemon, which like are a little narrower in scope, which means that they may be really good into TSS, but they might not be so good into other team styles like your Supermans and your special offense, or etc. etc. And yes, like, that's why BKC doesn't like Snorlax, is that the teams that it lends itself to do not tend to have good tools for handling like the diverse threats of the metagame. Now, many people have kind of misconstrued this point to suggest that BKC just does not like Snorlax and thinks that Snorlax is a bad Pokemon in this generation. And that's not exactly what BKC is saying, except not too long ago, he posted this one, and this is just like basically a crash out, which I think is funny, but and this thumbnail is unhinged, but yeah, I think that maybe the discourse that has surrounded this, like, BKC is just over it and just gonna lean into this I hate Snorlax kind of idea here. And I don't know. I think the first two videos I read them as more like a call to action, like build some better teams with Snorlax, and now BKC has kind of just given up on that and said, yeah, Snorlax is just ass. Like, you're gonna lose with it in tournament if you bring it. Which there are some examples of that happening, and there's some counter examples, of course. But yeah, Snorlax has some problems, and I hope that I've sort of illustrated some of them. But that's like hard committing to this one idea with Snorlax. Like, what if I don't want to commit to all that? Well, instead of having a team that revolves around Snorlax as a win condition, what if we just use Snorlax to support our other win conditions or our other teammates? And that's where you get this UtilityLax set. So this is the Smogon set for it, which has some crazy EVs, but it makes sense, trust. Self-destruct, body slam, shadow ball, and one of focus punch or earthquake. That tends to be what you'll see. You do have the option to run return, and as always, you have the option to run double edge if you want. But body slam is going to be probably the key to this set, and I hope I will construct a decent argument for that as we go on. But the game plan here is that you're going to switch into some special attacks thanks to your really good, specially defensive bulk. And you're going to spread a lot of paralysis with body slam. So rather than return for like damage, like it's so easy to switch into a normal type move in this generation because the steel types in this format are fantastic. And they're going to just eat up the damage from body slam or return. But because body slam has a 30% chance to paralyze, and Snorlax is so bulky that it's going to take a lot of hits, and against many Pokemon will force them to switch because they can't really break through the Snorlax. You will have some opportunities to get this body slam para, and if you do, say like you know, a Metagross switches in and you hit body slam and you paralyze the Metagross, well, all of a sudden, like, you don't look so bad into the Metagross anymore. If you have Earthquake, you could just 1v1 it, force it to blow up, potentially just hacks it and win with the Snorlax, which is always great. But like you're totally fine. You can even switch, and like that's plenty of progress to get a paralysis on something like a Metagross or a Jirachi, and even getting a paralysis on Skarmory can be nice, because Skarmory is probably going to make you switch unless you have Focus Punch. So if you can get some turns of Skarmory getting fully paralyzed, then you can really like slow down its ability to get all of its spikes up. And then it helps out for like some really slow Pokemon, like maybe you have like a Swampert that has no speed investment. That now is going to outspeed the Skarm, and it can potentially save you another turn of spike stacking. So that's really good. You also have Shadow Ball and Earthquake that will hit two of your tougher matchups, Gengar and Metagross, and also Jirachi. But Focus Punch is really, really good at stopping the Skarmory from spiking. Well, okay, it doesn't stop Skarmory from spiking, but it punishes the Skarmory for going for a lot of spikes. And then you have Self-Destruct to finish off some weakened foes, or to trade away your weakened Snorlax. You know, say your Snorlax is at 30%, it's like, okay, I'm only going to take one more hit, so I'm not going to be able to get much else out of this, so let me boom and potentially just trade my 30 HP Snorlax for whatever on the opponent's team. And it's also like a good panic option if you're up against something that's boosting out of control, like a Suicune. So yeah, that's nice. I want to note though that if you're not running Focus Punch on your UtilityLax, like if you're going with Earthquake instead, you're probably going to still want Magneton or a spinner to help you out against the spikes that Skarmory's going to get. Because if you don't have Focus Punch, then UtilityLax either has to boom or leave the field. Well, I mean, yeah, it has to just leave the field, period. So Skarmory is very commonly going to get up some additional spikes. You know, that being said, it's still not a bad idea to have a spinner if you have Focus Punch Lax, because Focus Punch Lax is going to do some damage, but it's not going to stop the spikes from going down, so keep that in mind. So here's the Snorlax set, Sonoro, which is the Italian name for Snorlax. We're going to give some credit to Dancing Along, who is somebody that I met recently in the scene. I think he's a great guy, and he shared me a Snorlax team, and I was like, this is awesome. I can use this for a video. So this Snorlax is very similar to the UtilityLax from Smogon, but it has a little bit more attack investment at the cost, I believe, is it of a little bit of defense and special defense, right? Yeah. So the concept here is that with a little bit of extra attack, we're going to have some slightly more favorable rolls to beat down certain things, because UtilityLax is essentially a beatdown Pokemon. Body Slam with this amount of attack investment is going to give us a favored chance to OHKO a bulky Doug, guaranteed against a Doug with no HP investment at all. But sometimes Doug will run some pretty decently high HP investment in order to live a Blissey Ice Beam. It really depends on how much HP they're using, but Body Slam's going to be great into Doug Trio. And then we have about a 50% chance to 2-hit KO offensive Zapdos if Sand is up. And that's important to know, because say you Body Slam the offensive Zapdos and paralyze it. If you get a high roll on the first Body Slam, then chances are you're just going to finish off that Zapdos, and that's really, really good. Shadow Ball is going to most of the time OHKO an offensive Gengar, but there are definitely going to be some scenarios, about 37% of the time, that Gengar will live it. And we're always going to 3-hit KO a defensive Gengar if we get burned. So, like, we still have some pretty good chip damage with Shadow Ball, even if we get burned on this set. So, it's not so bad. It's not the end of the world. So, that's good. Focus Punch is going to do about 33 to 39% to Skarmory. And this is what I mean by punishing Skarmory for going for spikes. Like, you're going to chunk into its health pretty significantly. Anything that does more than 25% to Skarm is considerable. But, like, Skarm can still go for the spikes, you know? It can still set, like, 2-3 layers and then die. So you have to be cognizant that Skarmory might do that to you. We have a 50% chance to OHKO a modest Blissey, and even if you found somebody who is crazy and running a 252 HP and max defense Tar, you would still OHKO that with a Focus Punch, so that's good to know. Focus Punch can be tough to click into some other Pokemon, but sometimes Snorlax will force some switches, particularly from some Spadef Pokemon or Pokemon that are really scared of getting paralyzed or boomed on. And Focus Punching those switch-ins generally leads to good outcomes, so good to know. Self-destruct here, we are 87.5% likely to OHKO a defensive Suicune, which is really, really big. If you boom your Snorlax and you don't kill a defensive Suicune, that might be a game-losing proposition for you, because you might not have something else that can beat Suicune if you're desperate enough to boom the Snorlax. Now, sometimes it's an endgame situation, and it's like, well, as long as I get any damage here, it doesn't matter. So, you know, I digress, but it's really nice to have like a high chance to just one-shot there. You'll do 67% minimum to Skarmory as well. So, say you're up against like a Drill Peck Skarm and you've focus punched it, and your opponent is like, I'm gonna click Drill Peck to play around the Snorlax's focus punches. It's like, okay, if you can get it low enough, you can just self-destruct and eliminate the entire Skarmory, and maybe it only gets one layer of spikes for doing that. With the defensive investment that we have, we will live an Adamant Brick Break from Metacham, not a Choice Banded one though. And we'll also live a CB Mash from Metagross. From the special side, it's like virtually a 5-hit KO from Timid Zapdos using Thunderbolt outside of Sand. There are a lot of special attackers that Snorlax is just going to eat up. And yeah, we have a little bit of speed investment. 99 speed will get us to the point where essentially we're going to outspeed everything in the metagame if it's paralyzed. Paralysis, if you didn't know, quarters a Pokemon speed, meaning that you essentially have 1/4 of the speed stat that you otherwise would. So Jolteon and Aerodactyl hit 394. If you divide that by 4, it essentially gets them to about 98 speed effectively. So Snorlax being at 99 would outspeed them. And I think that's considerable, especially on a set that has Body Slam. But I think that you should be running 99 speed Snorlax at least. Well, I don't know if I would run too much more speed than that, because there's very, very few things that you're going to outspeed otherwise. But I think any team that has some way to paralyze, you might want to consider running 99 speed Snorlax, because a paralyzed Jolteon is like super free for Snorlax to beat, and paralyzed Aerodactyl as well is nice for Snorlax to get the hit off first, because you're usually not going to OHKO an Aerodactyl with a Snorlax, but you could 2-hit KO it depending on what moves you have and what attack investment you have. So, you know, keep that in mind. Granted, CurseLax, who is lowering its own speed stat, is generally not going to outspeed things. Even sometimes it will not outspeed paralyzed Pokemon, but I digress. And immunity, so there's a little bit of an argument for whether you do immunity or thick fat on Snorlax. For this particular Snorlax, I think immunity is better. Immunity means that you will not get poisoned, period. So Toxic fails against you. If a move has some poison chance, it will not be able to poison the Snorlax, I don't think. Unless there's like some weird edge case scenario that I'm not familiar with. But that's really nice for this. Toxic would be one of the great ways to beat down this Snorlax that has no way to heal anything. But thick fat sometimes makes sense, and for Curse Rest Snorlax, I think thick fat might be better, because you're going to take less damage from fire and ice type moves. It basically gives you a resistance to those two. But like, Toxic is still annoying, and being forced to click Rest to get rid of the Toxic can sometimes be a death sentence for Snorlax, because losing 2 turns gives your opponent the opportunity to set their pieces up to beat your Snorlax. So there's still an argument that you might want immunity on Restlax anyway. So yeah, but I would not do thick fat on this Lax, so keep that in mind. So I've got 2 teams for you today. This first one, it was given to me by Dancing Along, who's, again, a really nice player, really nice guy. Good to meet you. Aero, Medi, mix offense. The idea is that Snorlax is going to be our switch into special attackers, and it's going to attempt to spread some paralysis on switch-ins to enable Aerodactyl to clean up the game. This is kind of like a rock spam idea, although I don't have, well, I didn't make this team, but we don't have rock slide on our Aerodactyl. Sorry, that would be crazy. On our Tyranitar. So, which is also a little bit crazy, but like paralysis is going to be really nice still. Aerodactyl has some paraflinch outs for end games in that way, but it'll also be helpful for say offensive Swampert to get involved when things are paralyzed. Then Swampert is generally going to be faster than them, so paralysis support is just nice. There are no like dedicated win conditions on this team, so you should take your turns considering that you need to wear away the opposing Pokemon so that you can clean up with something, particularly Aerodactyl. I'm like, some people say like, oh, you need win conditions for a team to be successful, and it's nice to have them because it can simplify end games, but you don't always need them. As long as you make positive trades throughout the game, you can sometimes get into a situation where it's like, okay, they have their Tyranitar as their last mon, and like they could set up and win the game, but I have a whole Swampert left, so like, yeah, Swampert's not going to set up and sweep a team, but like it'll stop their last mon from doing it in a lot of cases. So yeah, Swampert is the primary switch-in for the rock types and Metagross, so you want to preserve its health specifically to handle those. So sometimes it's really easy to switch Swampert in just to take a hit or two in the early and mid game to simplify some scenarios there, but you have to be cognizant that Swampert is the thing that stops us from losing to an opposing Aerodactyl. So you have to preserve that. And Zapdos is really good. So I've been back and forth on this. I suggest a rest sleep talk Zapdos, but I also like the just Thunderwave timid Zapdos. It's hard to say. You can definitely run either. If you like the paralysis support, maybe you're going to want the Thunderwave Zapdos, but Rest Sleep Talk does give you some longevity and gives you some outs in some games that maybe are not going so great for you. And against particularly like passive teams, then Rest Sleep Talk Zapdos can just kind of win because it'll pressure stall everything. But I don't know, it can be challenging. We don't have any spike support, so Zapdos is not going to force a lot of switches. Or rather, if it does force switches, then we don't get too much from it because we don't have spikes. But yeah, it's that one's a negotiable set. The other ones, I mean, I think I like what's going on with them, but I think that one is negotiable. The second team is going to be a little bit crazy. A Trappless, Spinless, Raikou Spikes team. So against conventional wisdom, we do not have anything to trap Skarmory, and we don't have anything to countertrack Dugtrio. So Skarm and Dugtrio could, in theory, be really tough for our team, but the idea is that every Pokemon has some way to hit Skarm. Except for our Metagross and our own Skarmory, but our Skarmory can taunt opposing Skarm, and Metagross can just boom if it wants to against the Skarm, so that's something. But everything else has something that will do at least 33% to Skarm, which is nice, because we can kill a Skarm that's trying to set 3 layers. Sometimes it will get the 3 layers, but we'll kill it at least. But you kind of have to play aggressive around the Skarmory because we don't have a spinner. And you have to be conservative with the Raikou, because if that's our main win con, and if it gets trapped by Dugtrio and eliminated, then the matchup gets a lot more difficult. You should let the Snorlax fish for Body Slam paralysis and blow up key targets like Blissey, so that Raikou can sweep in the end game. There are going to be some Pokemon, like say, like a Celebi, that could be difficult for Raikou to break through, and that would be a great boom target for Snorlax. But say you have to boom once, you have the whole Metagross to boom again. So that's kind of the idea. We have Taunt on both Skarmory and Gengar, so please use it a lot. Especially into Skarmory and then also into Blissey. In fact, I would say Gengar, unless you have a guaranteed kill on the Skarm, you should be taunting. Because you do not want the Skarmory to get a bunch of spikes up. And you know, sometimes I don't follow that advice, but I'm going to lead you to the treasures that I sometimes cannot achieve myself. That's the goal of any coach, right? Alright. Switch the scene here. So, Snorlax is a Pokemon that I feel like is not in a lot of in-game teams, or rather, opponent in-game teams. Like, I can't remember too many, like, big boss battles that have a Snorlax. But the rival from Pokemon Diamond and Pearl does have, which I'm actually going to turn the volume on this a little bit down. There we go. Does have a Snorlax. So, that cheating, so-and-so, we'll say. Finding a Munchlax in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl is incredibly difficult. So, yeah, I hate you for that. Alright, let's get into the battles. So we have Macchino. I don't know if I'm saying these right. I don't speak Italian, so. There were a lot of games that I played with this team where I was up against a lead Zapdos and I would switch into Sonoro and get crit by the Thunderbolt. I think it happened to me like 3 times in a row, and I was like, I'm losing my mind. But in any case, Zapdos will switch out with Baton Pass, and I'm going to go for Body Slam. Even if I knew that there was a Metagross on the team, I think I still like to go for Body Slam there, because I want to paralyze a Metagross if I can. And then Ludicolo comes in, and I'm starting to look at this team, and I'm like, isn't this kind of similar to the Ludicolo team that I built? And I kind of suggest that in the chat. But in any case, Sovente cannot do anything to Ludicolo, so I will have to switch to Sonoro. I go for another Body Slam, and Metagross comes in, and I get the para that time, which is great. That's what we want. Sovente will come back in to be the Metagross answer. But I anticipate that Ludicolo is going to come in, so I'm going to switch to Zapdos and get the Thunder Wave off on it. I take an Ice Beam for my troubles, which is not great. But Sonoro can come back in, and I will go for a Focus Punch. The idea being that Ludicolo is most likely just going to go for Leech Seed, and Focus Punch is my biggest damage into Ludicolo. That being said, my opponent could also switch to Metagross, and Focus Punch would have been my best click into hitting Metagross as well. But my opponent gets fully paralyzed, and this works out great for me, because I can simply just go for a Body Slam and finish off the Ludicolo, most of the time anyway. But Metagross will come in and take that hit, which is fine by me, because it's still a little bit of chip. Anticipating that Ludicolo would come in, I click Ice Beam with Sovente, and same idea. So that I think you're going to go for Leech Seed, so I'm just going to punch and eliminate you. Now Kingdra is here, so I have to switch to Sonoro, and this is where I realize that this is not my team. Who's going to take a Rain Boosted Surf and blow up. It crits, that doesn't matter. That would have killed regardless. And that's perfect for me. So that would have been a little bit troublesome if the Kingdra had Hydro Pump, but because it had Surf, we were totally fine. Granted, Hydro Pump has missed chances, so that they could have still played out the same way, but I digress. Now we have Torrente, which is a really fun Pokemon name to say, who's going to scare out the Zapdos, and I'm going to reveal it to have Ice Beam because this is a mixed Torrente. But unfortunately, I don't kill the Doug Trio and will die to an Earthquake. That is a pretty bulky Doug to have not died there. And then Blissey is the last Mon, so this is going to get a little bit interesting. The idea is that Macchino is going to be or Macchino? I don't know. Sorry, that was the only one that I'm not very sure how to pronounce. is going to be the win condition, but my opponent's just going to forfeit here. Yes, Sovente is in a great spot because if I get the play right, I'm going to get a lot of damage on anything, but like a switch to Zapdos would have been fine, I think. And then if it has HP Grass, or even if it doesn't, I'm going to have to respect the possibility that it does. I'm going to have to switch around, and I don't have a lot of great switch-ins to Zapdos myself now that Snorlax is gone. So I think that this could have been played out at least a few more turns, but my opponent's just going to decide to forfeit the game there. What I would have done probably from this position is Ice Beam. This Blissey, because it's Thunder Wave, I don't think it's toxic. And like I would have been okay to take a Seismic Toss. And if it's soft boiled, like whatever. So Ice Beam would have been great to hit Zapdos, and that's the most threatening thing to my team at this stage. So that's what I would have went for if we played it out, but we did not. So close that tab too. Next game against Milo is a boss, somebody that I keep running into on ladder. Makino is here, or I don't know if it's a K or an S sound. In any case, it's here. It eliminates the Doug Trio. Claydol comes in, I guess assuming that I might be banded, but I'm just going to hit the nice Shadow Ball there, and then I go to Torrente, threatening to kill the Claydol. I get an HP Grass off on the Suicune, and I'll have to go to Zapdos. This game made me think maybe Pursuit would be good on this Tyranitar set, so I could finish off something like a Claydol, but I mean, we're going to roll with what we got. I can go to Zapdos on the Suicune, who this is also just the timid with what's it called? Thunder Wave variant. I go for HP. I believe I have HP Ice on this Zapdos. Trying to catch the Claydol coming in, but Milo's a boss, very astute, going to Blissey, who should be just good into pretty much every Zapdos set. So Sovente will have to come in. Thunder Wave is going to blank. I can simply go for an Earthquake, and I catch Fortress coming in, which is okay, but not great damage. I'll go for Hydro Pump to chunk it. It gets a Spike down, which is like, it's not the worst thing in the world. I can go for another Hydro Pump to try to stop that from getting another Spike, but Suicune is in, and now this is kind of looking like a Big 5 structure. Or sorry, not Big 5, V5 structure. So I kind of get the gist of the team now. I'll go for a Body Slam with Sonoro, and then Focus Punch to try to catch something switching in, particularly the Fortress. Here, it's like, I kind of want to Boom, but like the problem is if I Boom into the wrong thing, then Suicune's just going to win the game. So I go for a Body Slam, predicting a switch, and I catch the Snorlax and get a nice paralysis there. It shows to be a CurseLax. I'm going to Brick Break into it, get a full para, which is nice. Brick Break again. If you get full para'd or crit, you're dead, but it actually goes for rest. This is kind of interesting. I mean, this is the sort of idea that you would want for a CurseLax team. The Doug Trio is going to try to eliminate the Tyranitar early, and then you can try to clear the weather, presumably with Blissey or Claydol. I've played a similar type of idea here, but instead of Suicune and Snorlax, I just have Calm Mind, Blissey, and Milotic. The Blissey will come in Aromatherapy to heal up all the status, which is annoying. In any case, Sovente is going to go for some Earthquakes. Sonoro comes in on the predicted Rest, which is great. And then considering that Body Slam and Focus Punch do about the same damage, but Focus Punch is way better at hitting Snorlax or Blissey, I'll just go for a Focus Punch there. And I catch the Snorlax and do tons of damage, which is great. Go for Body Slam. Don't quite paralyze the Fortress. And then I make a play here. I go for Focus Punch, predicting the Fortress to want to spike. But the Fortress explodes, and I was not anticipating explosion. The problem with this now is I do not have a great answer for eliminating a last Mon Suicune. Yeah, I have Zapdos, but I have to eliminate the Blissey first before that. So this game is probably gonna go south for me real quick. I'll still play it out. If I ever get a crit with this, then Torrente is just going to beat the Suicune. Suicune's going to rest. So now I'm going to go to Zapdos, who is going to meet a Blissey, which is exactly what I don't want to see. I'll have to go to Sovente. Aromatherapy, I hate that. And Suicune comes back in. I Earthquake, and yeah, this is the inevitability of a sort of Suicune team is like, if you don't have something that can 3-hit KO the Suicune, you're in trouble. So I'm gonna attempt to do that. We'll go on fast mode because I think this is gonna be pretty linear from here. Go for Earthquake. Again, if I ever crit, we can maybe make some headway here. But instead, I'm gonna go to Assalto, which is the Aerodactyl. I go for Double Edge and do basically nothing. I'm gonna have to switch to Zapdos, who can only take but one more Surf. I get a nice double to Torrente, but Brick Break is not going to do enough to really make a difference here. I was thinking maybe Focus Punch would be nice, but Brick Break is a lot better into hitting opposing Tyranitar because it's so consistent. I can reveal the Focus Punch on Sovente, which has been yet unrevealed. And then I will go for Earthquake, or sorry, Hydro Pump, actually, anticipating a switch, and also anticipating to be faster than Blissey, but I guess it makes sense. This is Mono Blissey with only Seismic Toss. It can run a lot of speed. So I will die to the next Seismic Toss there because I do not have enough HP investment. I go for Rock Slide, finish off the Snorlax. Claydol comes in. I have to switch. Booms on the Zapdos, which is not ideal for me, but Assalto can come in and I can go for Rock Slide. If I get a flinch or a crit, I win. But my opponent gets the Surf crit, which is really, really bad. Yeah, so Assalto will live a uninvested Suicune Surf, which I assume this is just a defensive Suicune that has no special attack investment. And I would have simply been able to click another Rock Slide. If I hit it, then Suicune is dead. And then with the combination of Assalto and Torrente, I should beat the Blissey. But instead, I'm going to go for a kill on the Suicune. My opponent doesn't go for Rest, which is, I think, a little bit crazy. I mean, maybe not, because the idea is that you think your Blissey can win from here. I just have to Brick Break. I have really no other click that makes sense. And if I crit my Brick Break, I should win. So we'll see what happens here. Shell Armor Blissey is basically just negating all my crit chances and my whole win condition. I get paralyzed, and then I'm fully paralyzed, and then I'm fully paralyzed again. All right, when that's it. It's over. I mean, to some degree, and ignore my elo. To some degree, like, I got hacked and lost the game, but I probably should not have allowed the Fortress to get a boom off on my Snorlax. Like, if this game would have went a lot smoother if I ever got the Snorlax to boom the Suicune. Like, then my opponent really doesn't have any sort of answer to a last Mon Aerodactyl, short of the Blissey getting, like, ridiculous hacks, which I mean, it got the 2 pairs in a row. It was due to get the ridiculous hacks on my Assalto. So that's using that team, but we're gonna use the other team for the rest of this. So, and I hope you guys enjoy this. Fuck it, we don't support Snorlax or what's it called? Raikou team. This is a lead sub Salamence, which is very rare. It goes for a flamethrower and burns my Skarmory, and then goes to Celebi, who just kills with HP Fire, that's just fantastic. So I'll go for Body Slam, and I get my reparations. I don't know if that's a great term to describe it as, but I get the para on Salamence. I go hard to Raikou, assuming that something that would be a good switch to Snorlax would come in, particularly Skarmory, and I do manage to catch that. And there's just no chance in hell that Skarmory is going to sit in on a Raikou, so I'm going to make a double back to Snorlax, who finds Swampert. It's pretty good for us. I'm simply going to go for a Body Slam to get some damage on Pert, or Fish for Para, which would be great if I parried the Skarm. But my opponent's going to find an in for Salamence, and I'm going to switch. The reason why I switch actually has nothing to do with predicting Tyranitar. I was thinking if I kill this Salamence with the Snorlax, then Skarm is just going to get in for free and get a spike, and I don't want that. So I'd rather switch to something that threatens to do some damage to Skarm, because -1 attack Snorlax is just not going to get there. But this has been really good because Swampert is great into a Tyranitar. I get a Hydro Pump off for some decent chip. I'll go for another Hydro Pump. If I crit a Hydro Pump, or if I, just get 2 more, then I will kill. Just go for it again, kill the Salamence, which is great, and then Celebi will come in. Based on how much damage it did to my Skarm, and having HP Fire, I'm assuming this is either offensive Super Celebi or Leech 3 attacks. It seems to be Leech 3 attacks based on the Leech Seed. But I will go for a Self-Destruct, and that was just chef's kiss right there, I think. To me, it covered 2 things. Either the Celebi stays in, and if I kill this Celebi off, then Raikou is set up to basically win the game here, because there's no more electric resist, and Swampert, yes, it is an immunity, but I have HP Grass, so I don't really care about Swampert. Or do I have HP Grass? I don't remember if I have HP Grass or Ice. We'll see, probably. Or the Skarmory is going to come in, and if I boom the Skarmory at this HP, it's going to die. So then I don't have to deal with any more spikes, and that's great. 1 spike is acceptable for this team. So I will go to my bulky attacker Metagross and say Psych, and switch to Gengar, who should take the Earthquake. I'll go for Fire Punch to get some damage on Metagross, and it goes for Meteor Mash and just ices my Gengar. But this is a great time for Swampert to come in. My opponent will have to boom. They actually don't opt to boom, which I think ends up being worse for them. Because yes, while Celebi is a fine switch into the Swampert, it gives me the opportunity to go to Metagross. I get crit on the Giga Drain, so this might get a little dicey with the HP Fire if my opponent goes for it, but they decide not to, and that gives me a boom here. So now I can simplify the game down to a 2v2. I go to Raikou, anticipating that Tyranitar doesn't want to be in versus the Swampert, because Tyranitar versus how should I say, the Tyranitar coming into the Swampert would be very brutal, and if I get the Ice Beam prediction on Celebi, then I might be able to just win the game outright with the Raikou, because now that I'm looking at this, I think this is an HP Ice Raikou, so I really needed that Swampert elimination. I go for a Substitute to block the Leech Seed, but my opponent will go for Giga Drain first, so I'm going to call Mind now, assuming that my opponent is just not going to want to let me get this behind the Substitute. But this is sufficient for what I need, because Leech 3 attack Celebi tends to not run enough defensive investment. So yeah, I can simply 2-hit KO with HP Ice here. If I was HP Grass, then my opponent would have won, but no, I'm HP Ice. I'll go for a Thunderbolt. I don't quite kill the Tyranitar, and it gets a Dragon Dance, but that's fine, because I can just go to Swampert, and this will simply live any hit. And my opponent gets a Rock Slide and flinches. I'm not sure if Earthquake would kill from here. I'm assuming not. But goes for another Rock Slide flinch, and I get there. All right. Again, stop looking at my elo. Like, jeez, I'm not embarrassed by it or anything. Skarmory versus Lead Jirachi, which is incredibly weird. I assume that Lead Jirachi is one of two things. It's either Choice Banded, or it's Thunder with Body Slam, and it's just like fishing for a paralysis. So, not wanting to take a Thunder, I switch to Swampert. But then my opponent switches to Magneton, and that makes me think, that must not be a Thunder Jirachi, because otherwise, like, you would definitely click it, or if you were going to switch, you wouldn't switch to Magneton. You'd be switching, predicting one of my switches. So I'll go to Swampert here, who can simply Earthquake and try to kill the Magneton. This Magneton is subbing down. I assume that it's got like Pitaya Berry or Salac Berry or something, but I just kill it. I've got enough investment that I should live a modest Magneton HP Grass, so don't really care. Against this Salamence, I am assuming, based on the fact that there's a Magneton on the team, that it's got to be a DD Mence. Either that or Choice Band. In any case, Skarmory's really good into that, and I will simply just get my Spike up. I went for Roar there. I generally go for Roar as soon as the Mence or Tyranitar or whatever gets the DD. And I get flinched, which is not good. Now Tyranitar is in. It goes for Rock Slide, which is probably the best case scenario for me, because I can simply go to Metagross and get the Meteor Mash kill. Had it went for Dragon Dance, I would have been in a little bit of trouble. But Metagross should live a +1 Earthquake from Tyranitar. I will not live an Earthquake from Salamence at this range, but I can simply go to Gengar now. Maybe I could have went to Gengar a turn earlier there, but I really, really could not afford to let the Salamence get another DD, so I think I stayed in to Explode. I go for Ice Punch on this Jirachi, who reveals to not have an item, so that to me is screaming Choice Band, so I will sack the Swampert. And now I can go to Snorlax here, who will completely wall a Shadow Ball, and I can go for Body Slam. So, again, yeah, Focus Punch would have done more to the Jirachi, and yes, if they had a Metagross to switch in, which is not super, like, that's not a super hard prediction to make that there would be a Metagross on this kind of team. But I say, like, it's better to paralyze the Metagross than it is to get the chip from Focus Punch. If you have Earthquake, there's a little bit more of an argument to be had there, because Earthquake will do almost enough to 2-hit KO Metagross. With the Spike Up, it usually does 2-hit KO. So you can keep that in mind, but I go for Body Slam, trying to get the para, and it also covers the Salamence switching in. I can simply go to Skarmory at this stage, who should take a Meteor Mash, and I can get another Spike Up, and if I die, I die. But in fact, I don't die. I get paralysis, so I'll get the third layer up. And now Skarmory is sitting nice and pretty against the Metagross, who misses a Meteor Mash and I roar, and that's just basically game right there. Jirachi will go for Doom Desire, I guess predicting a switch. Like, I guess it could have made sense to switch to Gengar if I wanted to save the Skarmory. And getting a Doom Desire off versus Gengar would have been devastating. That would have caused one of my Pokemon to die. But because the Jirachi Doom Desire is my Skarmory, whatever switches in is going to effectively have Skarmory's defense stat when calculating the damage. So, like, this is actually great. Like, that's the perfect Pokemon to get Doom Desired on, because very few Pokemon have a defense stat as high as Skarm. So Medicham will be the Pokemon dragged out by Roar here, and it's simply going to go for a Brick Break to finish off Skarmory, which is perfectly fine. I think I stayed in, and I don't recall if I have Drill Peck on this, but if I did, I would have Drill Pecked there, because that could essentially win me the Medicham, and like I was just playing to sack off the Skarm anyway. So I go for T-Bolt, which there's just no switch in for that, and it kills the Medicham. And on this turn, I'm going to take the Doom Desire, but because I have Skarmory's awesome defense stat bolstering me, I don't take that much. So, yeah, it's pretty good. I'll go for T-Bolt here. My opponent just ends up killing me. I can't recall if the reason why I went for T-Bolt was because I had HP Grass on at this time, or if I was just like over predicting. But in any case, with that amount of chip, the Salamence will have to kill my Raikou, and then I can go to Snorlax, who can Body Slam. Doesn't quite get the kill, but with Sand it will, and I also got the Paralysis, so even if I rolled lower than that, I would have been fine. Then Jirachi will come in. It will go for an HP Fighting, which, yeah, my Gengar should live that. And then I have Fire Punch, and that should clean up the game from here. So there's some banter in the chat, talking about, like, I was talking about some things that I was thinking about in this endgame. Particularly, I was wondering if I should have boomed against the Salamence to have a more consistent win there. Because if Salamence survived Body Slam plus Paralysis, then it killed my my Snorlax, it's possible that he would have killed my Gengar as well. +1 HP Flying does a lot, and I don't think this Gengar has quite enough bulk to live that, so it might not even have nearly enough bulk to live that. I can't recall the Gengar set off the top of my head, but yeah, so that might have been a more consistent path to victory, and if this Jirachi was slower than Gengar, then I would have been fine, but I was not running a Gengar fast enough to outspeed a Jolly Jirachi, so my sort of thought process was that I would need to force the Jirachi to lock in to a move that is bad into Gengar in order to beat the Snorlax. So that's why I went for the play that I did. It ended up working out, but yeah, I probably could have done some calcing to figure out if it was an adamant Jirachi or not. But, you know, it's a ladder game at like the 1400s. Which, again, stop looking at my elo, guys. It's not that bad. Come on. All right, lead Skarm versus lead Tar. I'm actually going to switch because I was thinking that there might be a Magneton. I don't know why I thought that. Maybe I played this person before and knew that there was a Magneton. But in any case, it ends up being not great for me because there's going to be a Skarmory, and rather than try to beat it down with the defensive Swampert, I'm just going to go straight to Raikou. I get the Thunderbolt off, which is great damage, and they simply roar, and I get to Gengar, which is fine by me. I'll go for Ice Punch because I think it would kill the Skarmory at that range, and then it's just better to click into most things. But now I have to go for Fire Punch to get the kill on Skarmory. Don't get a burn on Swampert, and I don't have a Grass-type move, so unfortunately I'm going to have to switch. I switched to Skarm, who finds a Zapdos, which is not good for me. Probably could have thought a little harder about that to figure out what a better switch would have been, but it is what it is. In any case, the Zapdos is going to reveal Protect, probably scouting for a simply a explosion there, but because I didn't go for the explosion, I really like. This is a big brain play by me. I go for Focus Punch, assuming that the Zapdos is not going to want to stay in and take a Body Slam. Reason being is that Body Slam has about a 50-50 to 2-hit KO in Sandstorm, and if I get a Paralysis on the Zapdos, then all of a sudden, like, one of your strongest attackers into my team is, like, simply just going to lose to everything. So I figured that the switch would either be Skarmory or Tyranitar, and Focus Punch was going to be great into either of them, and Focus Punch was just enough to get that Skarmory, and this is why we run so much attack investment. If we were running the standard UtilityLax attack investment, then we might not have gotten that roll, which could have been bad for us. But, you know, this extra attack, the extra sauce is just going to get there. Now, against the Gengar, at this stage, I'm willing to trade and get the Shadow Ball off. And then this is another really nice play. Boom. All right, the crit, I don't know if the crit mattered. I think it did, because Burn is obviously going to have the damage that Self-Destruct would do. But Gengar, being at 56% HP, it's not necessarily going to die to the next Shadow Ball, but, like, if you take another Shadow Ball, like, your Gengar is really low, and then you're opening up opportunities maybe for my Gengar to beat it. And then if this is not a Pursuit Tyranitar, which is, I'm assuming it's not, based on what the team is looking like. It kind of looks like just Big 5 Zapdos with lead Tyranitar, and lead Tyranitar on this team is oftentimes some DD variant or BKC Tar. Usually like a bulky DD, because you want to be decent into Dugtrio if you happen to lead against that. But in any case, I was figuring that either Zapdos or Swampert would switch in, and if I got the boom off on either of those, like, I was in a great spot. And I actually get the Zapdos, and so, like, this is Christmas morning here. So Snorlax in this game finished off the Skarmory, chipped the Gengar, and killed the Zapdos all in one while it was burned. Well, okay, it wasn't burned when it hit the Skarm, but you know what I mean. Like, this is great. And then I get a great switch to Swampert here. And I can simply Surf. I'll go for Protect just to get a little bit of HP back. And yeah, I should have went for another Surf to catch this Gengar switch, but I wanted to go for Earthquake to threaten to do more damage to the Tyranitar. And it also would have caught Blissey if that was the last Pokemon in the back, which is what I'm assuming. Because this Gengar is so willing to get the burn on me, I just stay in and go for Surf, and, like, thinking that I could beat the Gengar down, but it reveals to have Giga Drain and gets a lot of health back, and will just kill my Swampert. Now, thankfully, I was in Torrent range, so I was able to get a lot of that back, but I go for a double Protect here. And you might think that this set looks kind of stupid. Like, I mean, I'm losing the Swampert. Like, I'm not going to outpace the healing or anything. But the idea with the double Protect there was that I want to sack the Swampert so I can get a better in, I think, to Raikou. Oh, actually, I'm going to go to Skarm. But in any case, which probably suggests to me that I have HP Ice on Raikou at this juncture. In any case, like, I can deny a little bit of healing to the Gengar. Now, when I was at 2%, it's like, how much healing are you denying, really? But any amount could matter, and I figured that Swampert's not going to be able to do anything else anyway, because there's no shot that the Gengar is switching and allowing me to get a Torrent-boosted Surf on something. So, if I'm committed to sacking the Swampert there, to get an in on something else, then like I figured that Protect was my best play because it would deny the Gengar a little bit of healing. So I go to Skarm, who's going to just Drill Peck and finish off the Gengar. I think even if I got burned, I would have put it into range where it would have died to a tick of sand damage. I'll go for Spike, which would have been great against BKC Tar, but it does reveal to be a DD variant on this. But I should many times live the Rock Slide, so I go for Roar. If I did not get the Roar off, then I could have been in a lot of trouble, but we don't live in that world, so that's great. And I get a second Spike down, which is also great. Gengar's here. Not quite able to do much to the Swampert, but I am just going for Ice Punches to wear it down, and I will die to the sand here. But I think this is important because now that it's this low, Raikou might be able to win the game here. I go for a substitute, predicting that the Swampert would switch, and this is perfect because we reveal actually an Aerodactyl. This isn't El Clasico, is it? Might be. El Clasico is very similar to Big 5. I know it has Aerodactyl on it, but in any case. I will go to Metagross on a critical hit Earthquake, so that's fucking fantastic. And I think I just lose the game here, but I get a crit of my own, and we're just gaming. And then Hidden Power Grass will get there. I say my bad, which I shouldn't have said because my opponent didn't say my bad to me, so fuck you. No, I'm sorry if you're watching this. I don't mean that. It's just a game at the end of the day. But the reason why I went Metagross there is that I figured that Tyranitar had an opportunity to choke had it went for Dragon Dance. Because if it goes for Dragon Dance, this Metagross sometimes lives. It would depend. If it was an Adamant Tyranitar, I don't think it would have mattered, and I would have just lost anyway. But we would sometimes win the game there against the Tyranitar going for Dragon Dance, and if I kill the Tyranitar and sack the Metagross to the Swampert, then Raikou simply just wins, like you saw. But instead, I get crit, but then I crit back, so that's like instant karma, which is hilarious. And there you go. So I do think that both of these teams have some issues, particularly into like the balanced teams of the format, which is like most of them. And you're gonna have to game, and I may not be piloting them very well, but some of you I think are more talented gamers than me, or at least at piloting these types of teams. So I'm giving them to you, even though maybe some of these teams might not even be mine to give, at least with the team with all the Italian nicknames. But you know, that's the risk you run when you give me a team, is that I might feature it in a video, and then now it becomes common knowledge. So if you're trying to keep secrets, then do not tell me. But that's the Snorlax video. I hope that this covered at least UtilityLax. CurseLax, of course, has its own entire subset of things that it does and teams that it will fit on. But since I've used CurseLax in, I used CurseLax on my Ludicolo team, I kind of figured that I would talk a little bit more about UtilityLax, and hopefully dispel the notion that Snorlax needs to have like tons and tons of support to do anything. And I think that, you know, UtilityLax is great for a team that is not like selling completely out for supporting the Snorlax. So yeah, that's the video. I hope to see you guys for another one in the not too distant future.